ne cessent de m'harceler. Quand j'appelle la maison, on me dit voilà, ils ont appelé, ils sont obligés d'être ravitaillés par des voisins. Alors, je ne sais pas. Ah bon.
I think we got them made over there last time.
Non, c'était tout. Hein? Ok, bien des choses à tout le monde. Ah, merci.
Probably. You got your tag, Charles?
Hold up my tag note.
Les objectifs que vise ce sommet. Je vous remercie. Thank you. Sorry to keep you waiting. Ladies and gentlemen, Minister Farrakhan.
With your kind permission, I would like to stand. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is but one God, the Creator of all things, the sender of all prophets, the revealer of all truth. To Allah alone do I submit and seek refuge. We thank Allah for Moses and the Torah, for Jesus and the Gospel, for Muhammad and the Holy Quran. I thank Allah as a student of my teacher, the man who taught me that which I am about to say to you, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I greet all of you, my dear brothers and sisters, with the greeting words of peace. We say it in the Arabic language, Assalamu alaikum, which means in English, peace be unto you. To His Excellency Al-Hajj President Omar Bongo, to the distinguished people of Gabon, to our eminent and brilliant, the Reverend Dr. Leon Sullivan, the visionary who brought all of this about, to excellencies, presidents, and heads of state and government, to the distinguished leadership in Black America, and to all who are present, it is more than an honor and more than a privilege for me to have this opportunity to say a few words to you this afternoon. In fact, I feel deeply humbled by the honor and the privilege to speak before so many heads of state and government and so many distinguished African American leaders. But before I say anything, if I might be allowed to say, I believe that all of us are religious people. Some of us are Christians, some of us are Muslims, some of us may be animists, but all of us believe in a creator. And since we all believe in a creator, and since all of us know that Africa and black people in the diaspora are in a terrible and wretched condition, that there is no power that can get us out of this condition but the power of God or Allah, then we should never open a summit or close a summit without referring and calling on the Lord of creation for His help. I believe that as heads of state and government and leaders of our people, we are in authority over people and over material that none of us are the author of. We neither author the people over whom we have authority, nor are we the author of the wealth that we administrate. So why should not we give honor to Him who is the author of all things, that what we say and what we do may be blessed by Him, that we may be successful in coming out of the condition that all of us suffer. when I was told that I might have a word to say, I went to bed last night and thoughts came to me. And I woke up in the middle of the night and a thought came to me. So I shall not read anything, but I shall say to you what thoughts were revealed to me that I should say to you. This is an august body of leaders, leaders of thousands, leaders of tens of thousands, leaders of millions. The problem in the world today is not followers. The problem in the world today is with leadership. The Bible says, if the blind lead the blind, both fall in the ditch. And if our leaders are spiritually blind and morally bankrupt, we have no right to lead our people. So I shall quote from the Quran a verse that was given to me this morning, and its relevance only you can bear witness whether this is coming from one's own vanity or from the Lord of creation. In the 103rd surah or chapter of the Quran, titled Al-Asr, meaning the time, Allah says to us in the Quran, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the time, surely man is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and enjoin one another to truth, and enjoin one another to patience. In the Muslim prayer, Asr prayer is performed when the sun is midway between its zenith and the point of its setting. These verses of the Quran are not just talking about a time of prayer. It's talking about the time of the setting of the sun on a civilization. By the time, surely man is in loss. We are here at a summit because each one of us is losing power, losing authority, losing wealth, losing self, losing the dignity of our own humanity because we are in a new form of slavery called debt. Surely man is in loss. Why? Because we are not aware of what time it is, not by the watch, the Rolex or the Timex, but the watch of God's clock. What time is it? We are at the time of the end of white supremacy. We are at the time, no, I want you to listen. I don't need applause. I just want us to think. We are at the time of the end of white domination over the darker people of the world. We are at the time of the end of racism, at the time of the end of sexism, and we are at the time of the end of materialism. So if we are leading people and we are unaware of the time and what the time demands, then our leadership will suffer loss. What time is it, dear leaders? It is time for us to lead our people in accord with the time. Time demands that those of us who have been enslaved be free. Time demands that those of us who yesterday suffered under colonial rule must come out from under colonial power. Time demands that neo-colonialism must never be allowed to be substituted for an old form of colonialism which allows a black face to administrate over the same old plantation system of our former colonial masters. What time is it, dear leaders? And as I reflected on that, I was given a picture from the Bible showing you that the unity of religion is absolutely necessary to the freedom of our people. In most African countries, Muslims and Christians are not in unity with one another. Muslims and Christians are constantly arguing. Tribal differences are destroying national purpose and will. So we have to grow into a kind of knowledge that brings religion together, grows tribe into nation, and grows organization into organizational strength, as Mary McLeod Bethune said, that we need the unity of organizations. What is the picture that I was shown? In the book of Ezekiel in the Bible, there's a story about a baby that came to birth, but the baby was in an open field covered in the blood of the afterbirth. And there was no one present to cut the umbilical cord, and there was no one present to wash the baby that was polluted in its own blood. And there was no one present to diaper the baby. And so the writer in the scripture says, and I walked by and I saw this baby in an open field, and I said, live. Because the baby could not live polluted in its blood, and it could not live without the umbilical cord cut, and it could not live except there was someone there to perform a duty by that child. Who is that child? Polluted in its blood. Did you know, my dear and beloved leaders, that there can never be independence as a gift? No European government can grant you independence. Independence is not given away. Independence is earned through self-development. Please listen. This is how you got here from your mother's womb. Independence couldn't be given to you by your mother. You earned it by developing beyond the ability of the tiny house called womb to hold you in its grip. And when the womb could no longer hold you, your head forged the way for your freedom. And that's what these heads are for. They are to forge the way to freedom of the people who line up behind your leadership, hungering and thirsting for liberty and the pursuit of happiness and the opportunity to express the gifts that God has given them. But what is the condition of the baby? Some of us have been free 5 years, some of us 10, some of us 15 years, some of us 20, some of us 30, but we lay in an open field, polluted in the blood of colonialism, polluted in the afterbirth of what white European, white supremacists have imposed on Africa and on Arab nations. Beloved leaders and guides for the people, when we say polluted in the blood, it means we still live the life of a slave. We don't think like free men. We go to the capitals of America and Europe like beggars, weak to demand or ask for what unjust regimes will never give. Unless we develop power to force unjust governments to yield to just demands, we will never achieve what we desire for our people. The umbilical cord is not cut. All French-speaking countries are tied to France. And the blood of all colonialism is covering all Francophone leaders. I must speak honestly and frankly. Please listen. Please listen. All Anglophone leaders are tied to England. All of us are tied to our former masters in one way or another. And therefore, we don't talk about freedom. We talk about emancipation. Well, what is the meaning of the word? Emancipation comes from two Latin words, or one Latin word, mancipere, which means to free from your hand, but not from your control. You are freed from the hand of Europe, but you are still under the control of Europe. We are free from the hand of the government of white America and oppression and racism in that form, but we are still tied to them in many other ways. And until we can untie and truly cut the umbilical cord and come to a state of real independence, then we are fooling ourselves. We are self-deluded. We have pomp and circumstance of real power, but beneath it there is no real substance. So we pat each other on the back and say nice things to one another to make each other feel as we are when it comes to having real power and meaningful power to change the conditions under which our poor people suffer. And so the last thing I will say, we need to be washed from colonial education, an education that makes us lead our people in the way of our former masters rather than lead them in the way of true independence. We don't need French masters to tell us how to educate African children, nor do we need to be approved by England to teach our people what our people need to know. Each one of you have been educated in some of the finest universities and colleges of the world. But what good is it for us to be educated and our people to be ignorant? That imposes upon us a duty and a responsibility. Each one of us as leaders live in fine homes. We wear fine clothes. We drive in fine cars. But our people have nothing to eat because sometimes we lead not for the benefit of the people who we are supposed to lead for. Sometimes we lead our people to the benefit of our former colonial masters. So they won't trouble your leadership because your leadership is ineffective. Every strong leader that Africa produced has been killed by the same forces that hate black progress. Not only in Africa, but in America, we have seen our leaders who lead for our good cut down. We could call the roll on both sides of the Atlantic, but you and I are the leaders of today. You have the baton of leadership in your hand, and I have it in mine, and we, dear brothers and sisters, have it in ours. But the question is, will we lead, or will we play a game of let's get along? Get along for what purpose? You cannot sell out the future of your nation in order to live in luxury at the expense of the yearning of our people for self-development and economic development. Nor can our hands across the water be served by greedy, ambitious business people who are not really concerned with the development of a people but want to fatten their own pockets at the expense of people. We got to, no. I only have another minute, so just let me say what I have to say. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings. But I'm not a politician. I'm a man of God. And as a man of God, I cannot help myself. I have to say what God demands of me to say. Whether you like me or not is irrelevant and immaterial. I'm not seeking a vote. I'm seeking to be accepted by God as a representative of His will. So I close now, beloved leaders, begging you on behalf of our people to lead for the good of all of our people. Lead for the development of our people. Lead to erase ignorance from the heads of our people. And above all, let no one keep African leaders divided against each other. And let no one in America keep us divided one against each other. We don't communicate with each other. Therefore, an enemy gets between us and represents me to you and you to me, and therefore I don't like you and you don't like me, and we never get together to strengthen our bond of unity. And it is the same in Africa. There are those who will tell you who you should be with and who you should not be with. I say to the government of the United States of America, you have a big role to play, but not a role to crush the growing good leadership in Africa. Your role is one of a nurturer. The baby is laying in the open field. Somebody has to wash the baby. Somebody has to cut the umbilical cord. Somebody has to nurse the baby to strength. That's what America, that's what the governments of Europe should be doing. The government of America should be in Africa, helping every African government to help itself. No African government can be free with its mouth in the kitchen of Europe. Every African government must grow food to feed itself. Every African government, I repeat, must grow food to feed itself. Do not let Europeans tell you that your land cannot grow food. You are eating. The animals are eating. Grow food and become self-independent. For when you grow your own food, make your own clothing, and build your own shelter, you become economically free. But you are tied to Europe in an ungodly way. You buy butter from them as though we can't make butter. We buy milk from them. We buy material from them that we could grow right on the African continent. I say, brothers and sisters, I want to be a leader, not for others. I would love to be a leader that God approves of, that leads for the sake of God and for the sake of the people. I appeal to you in the name of Allah. Leave this conference and go home and think about what we can do together to raise all of our people up from the bondage of ignorance and from the weakness that is under the foot of oppression. To the dear President of Benin, who told us today that the Pope came to Africa and asked Africa to forgive Europe for her evils done to Africa. I think the Pope should be commended for taking a moral stand, but he's only halfway there. I appeal to the Pope on behalf of Africa. There can be no forgiveness without an admission of sin. And there, wait. And there can be no admission of sin without an atonement for what one has done of evil. And so we ask the Pope, if he would ask us to forgive, I would ask the Pope from this stand, on behalf of this summit, please, Your Holiness, go to the capitals of Europe and ask them to admit their evil against Africa. That is not only yesterday, but today. Ask the capitals of Europe, Your Holiness, if they will admit their guilt. Ask them our debt to Europe and the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, which is the same crowd of $350 billion, and then they owe us more than that. Since we are in debt to them, then let them atone for their evils by forgiving all debt to Africa and beginning anew. His Holiness Pope John Paul would do this, I'm sure all Africa and all Black America would be willing to forgive, because we have gained from slavery. We have gained from colonialism because, as the Bible teaches, we were not tried with silver and gold. We were tried in the furnace of affliction, and we have come out of it stronger and better. And therefore, we demand the right now to be heard in the halls of justice, because we know what injustice is like. We deserve to be heard speaking out against racism, because we know the effect and the evil of racism. It won't be black over white or white over black, but today it must be right over wrong, truth over falsehood, justice over injustice. And lastly, I say to this magnificent human being, the Reverend Dr. Leon Sullivan, a man whom God has inspired with this vision to bring all of us together. Dear Reverend Dr. Sullivan, I want to pledge to you, sir, in perpetuity, the Nation of Islam, all present leaders and future leaders, to the vision of a developed Africa and a developed black America. But it must not stop there, because the sons and daughters of Africa are in the Caribbean, they're in Central America, South America, and the Isles of the Pacific. We must unite the sons and daughters of Africa from all over the world. We pledge that we will never let your vision die. And so, to my distinguished friends and leaders from Black America, I thank God for this summit that allowed me to be in a room with the distinguished Louis Sullivan, Reverend Joe Lowry, Jesse Jackson, Coretta Scott King, Dorothy Height, these magnificent leaders of our people. You don't know how my heart burns to be with you in solidarity, regardless to whether you disagree with me or not. You can reshape me if I'm misshapen. You can help me if I'm out of line, but you can't help me if you don't talk to me. I have the courage of David to stand before Goliath. And I don't need the weapons of the world to defeat him. But I do want encouragement from the army of the people of God, that if I will stand, will you just help me to stand better? If I will speak, will you help me to speak better? If I don't say it right, help me to shape the words better. But let us not let the enemy of all of us keep us apart one from another. Because a weak hand on that side of the Atlantic reaching across to a weak hand on this side of the Atlantic makes both of us weak and ineffective, and we'll be around here conferencing for the next 100 years, and we will see nothing of it but a whole lot of talk and no reality behind that. But if we determine from this day that we will go back to America and we will let nobody keep us from the bond of unity, that we will fight for unity on that side to maximize our power so that we can speak to our government in proper terms and strengthen our government in the will to do better by Africa. That won't happen if we are divided, but it will happen if we can speak with one strong voice. And on this side, if you, the leaders, will not let any European counsel you or American counsel you in division, but if you will strengthen your unity one with another and let nothing and no one come between you, then a strong hand in Africa and a strong united hand in America will make the vision of this great man and the vision of W.E.B. Du Bois and Padmore and Garvey and Martin King and Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X, we'll make it all come to fruition if we will get away from the pettiness of self-aggrandizement and recognize that each one of us is passing from the scene. And we must leave our children and our children's children a better world. And we cannot sell out their future for ham and turkey. May God bless you as I greet you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to get on now. We're going to have to get on. Let's give him another hand so that I can get on, and then. Let no one say that this was not a summit. Let no one say that this wasn't a summit. No one can say that the voices were not heard. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a summit.